No one dared walk through the old forest after sunset, not after what they saw, not after the night it claimed its first victim. No one dared walk through the old forest after sunset, not after in the heart of a small, forgotten town nestled between rolling hills and dense woods, there lay the old forest, a place steeped in fear and mystery. For generations, locals told stories of a creature, a shadowy figure that haunted the deepest parts of the forest. They called it the Wraith of the Old Forest, and while some brushed it off as a tale to scare children, others swore by its existence. The incident that made the legend undeniable occurred in the winter of 1996. Jacob, a young and adventurous photographer, had recently moved to the town from the city. Intrigued by the town's folklore and always on the hunt for the perfect shot, he decided to venture into the old forest to capture its eerie beauty. He didn't believe in ghosts or creatures, and like many newcomers, thought it was all just superstition. On a foggy evening in late November, Jacob packed his camera and set off, ignoring the warnings of the locals. As he entered the forest, an unsettling silence fell around him. There were no birds, no rustling leaves, only the crunch of his footsteps on the frosty ground. The deeper he walked, the denser the fog became, almost unnaturally thick, swirling around him like it had a life of its own. He soon found a clearing and began taking photos. But as he clicked away, something in the distance caught his eye, a dark figure moving between the trees. At first, he thought it was another person, perhaps someone walking their dog. But when the figure paused and stood perfectly still, its black silhouette blending with the shadows, a cold dread began to creep up Jacob's spine. Without thinking, he raised his camera to take a photo. The flash illuminated the figure for only a second, but what Jacob saw chilled him to his core. The creature had no face, only a hollow, gaping void where its eyes should be. Its body was unnaturally tall, twisted, and cloaked in something that looked like tattered, shadowy rags. The creature didn't move, but Jacob felt its gaze fixed on him, piercing through the darkness. He stood frozen, his breath visible in the cold air, heart pounding in his chest. Slowly, the figure started to glide toward him, its movements smooth yet unnatural, like it was floating above the ground. Panic surged through Jacob, and he bolted back through the trees, the sound of branches cracking behind him as the creature pursued him. He could feel its presence closing in, the cold intensifying with every step. As he reached the edge of the forest, Jacob stumbled and fell, his camera slipping from his hands. Desperately, he scrambled to his feet, only to find the creature standing right behind him, its shadowy form towering over him. For a moment, everything went silent, the world frozen in place. Then, in an instant, the creature vanished into the fog as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Jacob trembling and gasping for breath. He ran the rest of the way home, refusing to look back, terrified that it might still be following him. When he returned to his apartment, Jacob frantically checked his camera, hoping the pictures he had taken would prove what he saw. But every photo from the forest was blank, as if the camera hadn't worked at all. The only image that remained was a single blurred shot, taken just before he ran, of a dark, twisted figure standing between the trees. Word of Jacob's encounter spread quickly through the town, and while some dismissed it as a hoax, others knew the truth. The Wraith of the Old Forest was real. Locals shared more stories, revealing that the creature had been spotted numerous times over the years, always near the same area of the forest, always shrouded in fog. In the months following his encounter, Jacob became obsessed with the creature, researching every detail he could find about the forest and its history. He learned that many years ago, a hermit had lived deep in the woods, a man believed to have dabbled in dark rituals. Some claimed he had summoned something from another world, something that could never leave. Jacob's health began to deteriorate. He grew pale, gaunt, and his once vibrant personality faded into paranoia and fear. He rarely left his apartment, convinced that the Wraith was watching him, waiting for the right moment to strike again. On a particularly cold night in early spring, Jacob disappeared without a trace. His apartment was left untouched, his camera resting on the table with the same blurred photo of the creature. Search parties scoured the forest, but no one ever found him. Some believe the wraith took him, that it doesn't stop once it has marked you. The old forest was eventually fenced off, and no one dared to venture there anymore. But on quiet, foggy nights, some claim they can still hear Jacob's footsteps running desperately through the woods, pursued by something unseen. And if you listen closely, you might hear a voice whisper through the trees, "It's still watching. It's never gone."